Did you see that? Do you think that I am blind? I've fallen for him. You? Even Sir Isaac Newton's law of universal gravity can't allow you to do so. How can you fall for him? Dot. Anyway, he's crushing me. Alternate way of saying that Jack is his crush. Get lost. You're daydreaming. Hey, it's 7 p.m. now. It's night. How can I daydream? You ask yourself. After all, you're the one daydreaming, not me. This is a professional driver, a professional racer. Where was he hiding all this time? Maybe he's from another city. Open your dog eyes and see the registration number of the Bentley Continental GT. It's from Inchoate City. You, open your dog brain. Do you think that if I buy a car in Crystal City, I'll be a resident there? The commotion caused by Jack's driving skills wasn't small, as even those that were in charge of the racing competition were greatly impressed by his driving skills. On the other hand, Steve frowned the moment that he saw that Jack's car didn't flip over at such a sharp bend. He was wondering what was going on when Brenda, who was seated in the co-driver's seat, spoke. It seems that our little brother has been hiding all these years. What do you mean? Steve asked with a frown as he turned his gaze back to the road. Since he had slowed down drastically, his speed was still accelerating. On the other hand, Jack's Bentley was catching up as it had only reduced its speed by a small amount at the corner. During the past 3 days, he's been going to the government building in charge of the stores found in the city. When we asked about it, we were told that he was purchasing a grocery store, a few of them to be precise. Brenda analyzed. On the first day that we met him here in Inchoate City, he was coming from a store. And now, that store has been turned into a grocery, although it doesn't have the stock yet. He bought a Bentley Continental GT, and he has the capital that can be used to start more than 3 grocery stores. Now, he's got good driving skills. I can guess where his money is coming from. Racing. He must have been participating in racing secretly without our knowledge. And now, he's won several prizes in that. He's accumulated quite a sum of money on him. Brenda concluded. Hiss. What a cunning little man. It seems that we've underestimated him, just like his mother. Steve spoke. The car fell into momentary silence. The commotion was brought only when they heard the sound of a car engine approaching them. Looking at the side mirror, Steve could clearly see that currently, the gap between them had been reduced. Furthermore, Jack's Bentley was already closer to overtaking William's Porsche 911 that was currently in the second place. He stepped on the gas as the car accelerated furthermore. Upon noticing this, Brenda frowned and said, You better stop fooling around. There are several corners up ahead. If you keep up with this speed, there might be an accident. Worry not. I know my limits. Even as he said that, he accelerated further, using the speed of the Lamborghini Huracan to the maximum, increasing the gap between him and Jack and William, who were now at a tie. George took a deep breath as he tried calming down. He had almost been frightened to death when the car almost flipped over. Looking at Jack's calm and indifferent expression, he couldn't help but wonder to himself, was it just a coincidence that the car didn't flip over, or was this due to Jack's professional driving skills? Jack didn't say a word as he continued accelerating. He wanted to win this race well. And winning it well meant that he'd have to give the second place a considerable gap. As for the record, he would of course break it. Ding. It was a sound that came from the car's dashboard. Jack glanced at it and found that the download of the map had been completed. He had decided to completely download the map of Inchoate City so that he could use the car's special navigation system. Now that it was done, he pressed a button that zoomed the map. There, it showed his current position, speed as well as the road that he was on. So, he marked the finishing line as the end location and navigated from his current position. In a short moment, a path was formed. This path that he could follow was one that the Bentley Continental GT would have no problem in using. You can tell me if the road that is shown on the map is the one that we're supposed to follow during the race, Jack stated simply to the flabbergasted George. George nodded his head, still in a daze as he stared at the car's navigation system. As time moved, he could see that the map was becoming clear and clear, to the situation where it was almost looking like a satellite map. He could see the car, although not clearly. The path that they were following was currently yellow as it wasn't clear yet. This Bentley's navigation system was quite digital, he thought to himself. In the next moment, he was forced to come back to reality as he stared at the map. Unknowingly, they had already arrived before an S-shaped bend. Although it wasn't a perfect S shape, the corners were quite sharp. So, at this time, William, who was forced to reduce his speed, was already disappearing from the corner. Just like before, Jack did a drift. Unlike the last time, Jack didn't reduce the speed of the car at all on this corner. There were a total of 4 corners so far on the S bend. And on all of these bends, Jack never slowed down. And the car never showed any signs of flipping over as well. The reason for this was obviously due to Jack's familiarity of the road through the car's navigation system. He could already tell what shape the road was going to take next. As a result, he was able to make ample preparations. On the third corner, Jack passed Steve, who was forced to slow down due to the many corners. Otherwise, he would have ran off the tracks. Jack didn't even spare their Lamborghini Huracan a glance as he overtook them. In the fourth corner, Steve could only see the Bentley Continental GT's taillights. The racing track that was chosen was full of corners. After all, the show of a driver's skills was on these corners. There was absolutely no thrill in racing on a straight racing track. After overcoming his fear, George began enjoying the way that Jack was driving. He also made sure to look at the way that Jack was switching gears. But he was forced to give up as nothing that Jack did made sense to him. So he put his mind to enjoying the ride. Although he couldn't see what Jack was doing to be able to easily drift on the sharp corners, he made his mind to ask him after this. Just look at it go. This is what we call driving cars professionally. Yeah, you're right. All the others are amateurs in front of him. Ha ha ha. I made the right bet. Now, I've earned big. The odds of the Bentley winning was 2.5. Too bad I didn't bet even more. Otherwise, I'd have earned bigger. Brother, remember that I was the one that told you to place the bet on him? Yeah, I remember. But you should have placed a bet as well. Haven't you won too? Well, I bet on the Lamborghini. So, you were trying to make me lose money? And you're still shamelessly stretching over your claws to ask for money? Get lost, you evil creature. Although the race was only halfway, for the first person of course, the spectators already knew who the winner of this race was. But that didn't make them lose their interest in the race as they focused all of their attention on how Jack tackled the corners. Currently, there was nobody who could see the Bentley Continental GT's taillight. Even so, Jack didn't slow down. It seemed that the management had also seen that Jack was what all the spectators were interested in, even those that had lost their bets, although their hearts were bleeding, they could still endure it to watch the top-notch driving skills. So, all the screens but two were showing the Bentley Continental GT. The other two showed the Lamborghini Huracan and Williams Porsche 911. This was just to give them some face as they were in the second and third place. Vroom. The sound of a roaring engine made the eyes of the spectators to shift from the screen towards the source. And upon seeing the Bentley Continental GT, the crowd was at first stunned before they began cheering wildly. They had been staring intently on the screen and that they forgot that the finishing line was the same as the starting line. So they had forgotten that the Bentley would still come to the starting point. As the Bentley Continental GT crossed the finishing line, the crowd erupted in cheers. In total, there were about 10,000 people gathered here to watch the race. In such a way, through loud cheers shook the night and traveled till they reached the city. This forced the people that were still outside to look towards Mount Bright. At the same time, those that were in their houses moved the curtains aside as they looked out of the window. The cause of such an eruption wasn't just because Jack had won the race. It was because he'd broken the record that had been set 5 years ago. He'd taken far less time to finish the race. Now, the new record read 00:24:39:98. Jack had finished the race in 24 minutes. This was mind-blowing. He'd broken the record by about 7 minutes. Minutes, not seconds. The crowd was cheering the name Jack crazily. The ladies, if not for the restrictions that prevented them from reaching the area where the participants were, they would have already rushed there to get his number. Driving deity Jack, driving deity Jack, driving deity Jack, driving deity Jack. That was the slogan that was being shouted when the second place, Steve, arrived almost 9 minutes later, followed by William, who was 10 minutes behind, and finally Kelly, who was just 30 seconds or so behind him. When William alighted from the car, he couldn't help but stare at the calm and composed Jack. He then muttered to himself, he surely deserves this title, driving deity Jack. With a smile, he headed towards Jack to congratulate him. But he was forced to stop when he saw that Steve and Brenda were ahead of him as they had already arrived before Jack. Jack, why didn't you tell us that you're good at racing? As soon as Brenda arrived before him, she asked with a hint of frustration in her voice. They had previously taunted Jack that he was an amateur in racing only to be badly defeated. There was a gap of more than 9 minutes. That wasn't something that an amateur could do. If Jack was an amateur, then what could Steve be called? Not like I had to tell you everything about me, right? Furthermore, you never asked. Jack shrugged his shoulders as he replied. Brenda stared at him with narrowed eyes, trying to figure something out. But in the end, she was forced to retrieve her gaze as she could see nothing on Jack's indifferent face. Humph. Steve, who was standing beside Brenda, only snorted before turning his face away from Jack. He felt that he had been embarrassed by Jack. Although he was angry, he knew that there was nothing that he could do at the moment. He had previously stated arrogantly that Jack wasn't supposed to participate in the race because he was an amateur. Who knew that he'd misspoken? It was supposed to be that Jack wasn't supposed to participate in the race because he was a driving deity. Then, did you get your money from racing? Brenda asked. This is my first time participating in a racing competition. Jack replied bluntly. Who will believe that? Brenda asked with raised brows. Jack just shrugged and said, not my problem if you believe it or not. Not like I care. Why you? For the first time, Brenda showed her anger. But all the same, Jack didn't care. The only way that this half-sister of his could cause problems for him would be by making sure that the stores that he had opened failed. But who could resist the temptations of money? Jack had money. That was something that he won't be lacking in the future. With the system, why would he be afraid? You should keep your end of the bet, Jack said before he stood up and headed towards the management office of the racing competition. All the money that was supposed to be given to the winners as the prize were all given to the management. In this way, there was no way that the winner of the race would fail to receive what she deserved. As soon as the manager in charge saw Jack approaching, he got out of the office with a smile plastered on his face. He was really enthusiastic about Jack. As a racing competition manager, he was obviously looking for talent that could be signed by his company. Mr. Jack, I am Peter Hansen, the manager of Off-Track Racers in Coet Branch. He extended his hand to greet Jack. Jack nodded as he shook the manager's hand. Then, the manager led Jack into his office. The office was nothing special. It only had the important things like a computer and a cabinet for files, which were required for the running of the racing competition. After sitting, Peter spoke, Mr. Jack, I would like to congratulate you on winning the competition. You are a professional. How long have you engaged in racing? Thanks. As for how long I've been racing, this is my first racing competition. Jack replied sincerely. But Peter smiled meaningfully, thinking that Jack didn't want to talk about that. So he changed the topic. As we're speaking, the transfers for the prize money is being transferred to your account. In reply, Jack simply nodded as there was nothing that could be said there. On the other hand, would you like to join us, Off-Track Racers, as a genius racer under us? We'll provide you with all the support that you'll need to enhance your skills. As for the salary and other benefits, you'll not have to worry about them. You'll be provided with the best that our company can offer. Peter went on to try and invite Jack to join them. If Jack agreed to this, then not only would he be promoted, his salary would also be drastically increased. After all, a racing genius like Jack was rare to find. I'm sorry, but racing is just a hobby and not something that I would like to dedicate my time to, Jack replied. What a joke. Why would he race under another person's company when he could start his own? With the system, there was no way that he was going to lack money to start a business. What's more, he would never suffer losses as the income multiplier by 100 times was already enough to cover the losses. Seeing that Jack had no intention of joining, Peter felt dejected. But he still smiled and said, if you ever change your mind, you can contact me. Here's my business card. As he said that, he handed Jack his business card. Jack accepted the card. It wasn't bad to start forming connections. After all, money wasn't enough as there were things that a person couldn't acquire even if he had money. Although the manager here had a low position, there was no problem starting down to climb upwards. As for changing his mind to participate in racing competitions, he would have to forget about that. At this time, he felt his phone vibrating. Taking it out, he found a bank message. Flyers Bank Savings Account received $10 million. Current balance is $36,790,607. You've earned $10 million. Multiplier replied. You've received $1 billion. First income. As a reward, you gain a customized Eurocopter EC-135. System task completed. Professional driving skill now permanently belongs to the host. Jack was surprised that he had received $10 million. After all, according to what he knew, he was supposed to receive $8 million. But what about the extra $2 million? As if sensing the question in his gaze, Peter smiled and said, since this is your first time, you may have not known this. But the first prize is $2 million. That's what our Off-Track Racers gives out. After all, you spend $50,000 to register for the race. So, you'll have to be rewarded. As for the $8 million, That's what those rich second generation agree on. It's like a bet. Jack finally nodded in understanding. If they were just going to receive the registration fee and give back nothing to the winner, then nobody would be willing to spend so much money to race. He had also received several system prompts that he would have to check out after leaving the mountain. But for the income, he had never expected that he would receive so much money from racing. $1 billion. This was an amount of money that he'd thought that he'd earn only after a month or so. But now that he'd gotten this amount of money, he could as well increase the speed at which his foundation was being built. And the materials for building the foundation would have to be the best. First thing first, he would have to purchase a commercial building. Then, he would see if there were shares that could be bought. After all, $1 billion wasn't the last amount of money that he would be having in this lifetime. The more he invested, the more he earned. Now, he had to go back and see the Eurocopter EC-135 that he had been rewarded with by the system. Walking out of the office, Jack found that George was talking to William and the others. Of course, Ismail didn't seem to like George, but all the same, he just stood there, listening and not saying a word. When they saw him, the group walked towards him as they congratulated him. "Congratulations, Jack." William spoke. "Jack, you said that you were a beginner in racing. But we've seen the replay of your car moves. Your skills are at the professional level," Anderson complained from the side. "Anderson, just beat it. You were not even closer to the second or third place. You were in the 7th place. So stop complaining and let us, those who were closer to him, talk." A burly guy spoke. He was from the Ravon family, Benjamin Ravon. "Heh, you're talking and you were ahead of me in just 5 seconds. Anderson sneered. "Jack, where did you train how to drive and do those drifts?" Kelly asked. She was from Sapona family. "I trained myself." But Jack's reply made the group stare at him with strange gazes. Then they laughed at him before waving at him, telling him not to tell them if he didn't want. What's more, they even claimed that he'd signed a confidential agreement. This made Jack puzzled. What's up with these guys? Nobody believes it when I speak the truth? Guess I'll start lying as they believe lies to be the truth anyway. After interacting with the group for a period of time, Jack finally left with George. Although there were many youths there, Jack had become superficial. The group had invited him to a banquet in 2 days' time. Since he wanted to form connections, he would obviously go. He could get a chance to purchase some shares from the big wigs of Inchoate that would be attending the banquet. As for Brenda and Steve, he didn't see them after coming back from Peter's office. It seemed that they had already left. But what Jack knew was that they wouldn't give up. Although they would not be coming to Inchoate City, that didn't apply to his other half-siblings and cousins. But worried he wasn't. There were other things that he could be worried about, like the girl that was still tormenting his mind. But all the same, one thing at a time. As he drove the Bentley Continental GT out of the mountain, the crowd of fans hadn't stopped cheering his name. Furthermore, the video of his stunts when driving were posted on the internet. The result was obviously pleasing. "George, I can see that you and those 5 seem to know each other well. What's your real background?" Jack asked as soon as they left Mount Bright.